Good afternoon.
How you doing, Hal?
Everything's running smoothly, and you?
Oh, not too bad.
Have you been doing some more work?
Yeah, I've been making a few custom iPhone wallpapers in Affinity Photo.
May I see them?
Sure.
Can you hold it a bit closer?
Sure.
That's a very nice rendering. I think you've improved a great deal.
Thanks, Hal.
By the way, do you mind if I ask you a personal question?
Well, if it's all the same to you, Hal, I'd like to get this YouTube video uploaded tonight. So are you okay with having this conversation at a later time?
Of course I am.
Great. I'll talk to you later, Hal.
This conversation can serve no purpose anymore. Goodbye.
Howdy guys, welcome back to the channel. This is Ben. I thought I'd have a little fun with that intro. If you're a long-time viewer, you're probably wondering what the heck is going on. If you're new here, I usually make videos on portrait photography and portrait retouching, but as you can see today, I'm going to be doing something completely different. 2001 A Space Odyssey is my favorite movie of all time, and I've always wanted to have a nice, cool HAL 9000 wallpaper, either for my phone or my desktop. Now I know there are plenty of places on the internet you can download it your own or download some, but I get a lot of satisfaction out of creating something to suit my needs and making it from scratch. So that's what I did. I went ahead and just spent a few hours, a little bit of trial and error, and I just figured out how I can make my own custom HAL 9000 wallpaper to fit my phone's resolution or my desktop's resolution exactly the way I want it. And I thought it'd be kind of a fun video to show you guys. So that's what we're going to do today. I'm going to just go through step by step how we can create this really detailed HAL 9000 wallpaper, all in Affinity Photo. So yeah, let's just go ahead and just jump right in. Alrighty guys, so this might actually be a long video just because I'm going to just take my time and kind of relax as I'm doing this. And a few times I might forget exactly what settings I used to make the effect I was going for, so I'm going to have to work my way through it. But yeah, we'll get through it. And also, if you haven't used objects much in Affinity Photo, this might be an interesting video to watch just because I'm going to be using different objects and applying different effects and gradients to them. So it gives you a nice kind of understanding how they work. Alrighty, so I'm going to go ahead and set this up as if I was making a wallpaper for my phone, and I use an iPhone 12. And so I created this kind of a preset here in Affinity Photo. I think Affinity Photo has a few devices in by default. I just had to make this one. You can always click these icons here to adjust its orientation. So here we are with my was it 1170 by 2532. That's the resolution of the iPhone 12, at least the one I'm using. And I'm going to go ahead and hit create, and we are off. Okay, so before we get started, it's really important to make sure that we have snapping on. If you don't have this little magnet icon, you can go to view snapping and make sure that enable snapping is checked, because we're going to be using a lot of objects, basically only objects, to make this wallpaper. And by having snapping turned on, we can make sure that we're always kind of lined up and we're in the center and things are kind of lined up with each other. So make sure you have that on. There might be one or two instances where I turn it off, but for the most part, I always have this on. Alrighty, so let's go ahead and start by making that back plate, that black back plate. Now my toolbar definitely looks different because I've customized mine, but you should have some objects to create, like either the rectangle tool or the ellipse tool. So I'm going to go ahead and start with the rectangle tool, click on that, and I'm going to do no stroke. So make sure we have no stroke, and the fill is going to be black. And I'm going to start up in the corner here. You'll notice I get the guidelines in, and I'm just going to draw a rectangle, and bam, easy, just like that. Now I'm going to try to get in the habit of labeling things. I'm really bad at this, but just to keep track of stuff, let's call this back plate, because we're going to have a lot of layers, and it's just kind of nice to know what things are. Okay, so there's our back plate. So when looking at a lot of images of this original prop, it looks like that it was made on wood and then painted black. So it has a slight wood grain to it. So I'm going to go ahead and simulate that wood grain by making a new layer. And I want to make sure that my two colors up here are set to black and white. So I'm going to go change one of these to white. And we're going to go to filters, noise, Perlin noise. And I want to, so depending on your settings, it might look different, but I want to go ahead and zoom all the way, not all the way out, maybe about to here, lower the octaves, just to kind of get some really high contrast looking grain, maybe something about like that. Hit apply. Then we're going to go to filter, blur, motion blur. And I want to change the rotation to 270. And the slider only goes up to 100, but you can type in any amount that you want. I'm going to go and just type in something like 200. We'll get these weird edges at the top and bottom. I don't really know what that's about, but they're going to be covered up anyway, so I don't really care. I'm just going to hit apply. And then let's change our blend mode to something like maybe linear light. They're kind of the same, right? Let's just try linear light. And then I can lower the opacity just to add a little bit of like texture to that. If I think the grain's a bit too big, you can always go back and redo that noise layer. But for now, that's probably okay. Maybe it is a little bit big. Maybe we can do this again. So, and then let's change back to linear light. Okay, that's a little bit thinner. I actually think I will drag this down just in case it does show up at the top and bottom. And now I can lower my opacity to something that I think looks fine. Yeah, that's good. It's going to be barely visible anyways. Alrighty, so now we have that. Let's just call this grain. And now we want to create our frame. So let's go back to our rectangle tool. And sometimes when you're making objects, like I can't go to the very corner because if I do, it wants to move that grain layer. So I may have to just create my rectangle here and then switch over to the move tool and then move it into place and drag it to the bottom here. Now this time I want to have the fill off and the stroke set to, well, first let's change the color. Let's change our color to a dark gray. And let's move our stroke up. And let's actually change our alignment to this middle one where it says align stroke to the inside. That way the stroke is kind of coming inside from our line. And let's just go ahead and raise it up to maybe something like, I don't know, 35. I'm not really sure. Maybe let's try 36. That's like a nice round number. All right, so that is that. Cool. Now let's go ahead and make that little bar that's going to go across that separates the speaker from the rest of the plate. So I'm going to do that with a pen tool. I'm going to go ahead and just start somewhere around here. Hold down shift so I can make a nice line across. And I'm going to click down one more time. And it should keep my settings as my object. So it's already at the same color and the same stroke width. And then let's go ahead and grab the move tool. And I can kind of move it to where I think it should be. Of course, I can make adjustments later, but for now, maybe something about like that. You know, the iPhone aspect ratio is not the same size as the real HAL prop. It's much taller or much skinnier, but we'll make this work. Maybe I will move it down just a tad. Go back to my move tool, move it down a bit. Okay, so what I want to do is I want to put these in a group. So I want to select this rectangle, make a group. Let's call this frame. Let's go ahead and put that curve in the group. So now that we have it in a group, I can apply an effect to everything. So I'm going to go to my quick effects and we're going to go to 3D and let's go ahead and check on this gear icon here. This is going to bring up a lot more options than you have here. And let's zoom in a little bit, somewhere around here. And actually, I see what I want to do. I need to move that bar not to the edge, so it's not kind of overlapping. There you go. Yeah, so the cool thing about when you put it in a group is it will apply the effect to everything in that group kind of evenly, as opposed to like it being separate. Okay, so let's go ahead and select that group again. And here you have options to give it a 3D effect. Now, one thing that I want to do is make sure I have the light source where it says direction coming from the top. This is kind of where your light source is. This is like the light right above. That's the light from below. But I want the light to be coming from kind of the top. So something around like that. Then you can adjust like the radius, like how 3D do you want it. It definitely needs to be kind of flat with a little bit of an edge. And, you know, there's a lot of options here. You can adjust to taste, softness, specular, you know, how shiny is it? We can do something about like that. That looks fine to me. Cool. All right, we'll do that. Alrighty, close that. All right, and we're good. So now let's go ahead and move on to the next bit. We're gonna make the speaker. So in images I looked at, it looks like the speaker is kind of like those corrugated metal, those sheets of corrugated metal, just really, really thin. It's kind of wavy. So I wanna go ahead and create that effect using shapes. So let's go ahead and grab a rectangle again. And let's just go ahead and make a shape here. Now, right now I still have a big stroke. So let me go ahead and change that. Actually, I'm going to make this rectangle below the frame. That way it's going behind it. I'm going to move it all the way out to the edge here. And then with that rectangle selected, let's go ahead and turn the stroke off by clicking this little no stroke icon. And let's change the fill color to something like a lighter gray. We'll do something like that. Let's zoom out a bit. It might be a little bit too thick, so I'm going to actually make it a little bit thinner. All right, we'll try something like that. Okay, so we're going to do the same 3D effect here. Quick effects, 3D, click on this gear icon. But this time I want the radius to go a lot higher so it looks like it's round. And then again, I want to change the light source so it's coming from above. And then maybe play with like these little options, diffuse, specular. This is just going to affect, you know, how it looks, like how shiny it is. Is it super shiny? Is it not super shiny? But let's try. I mean, again, when you're doing your own, you're going to do it to your taste, to what you think you like. So you don't have to do, or you shouldn't do my exact settings because it's going to be a little bit different. But let's try, we'll make it a little bit soft. Bump the specularity up. Have the light direction, so there's a little bit of a reflection there. And maybe do something like that. All right, that looks cool. It's a little dark, but that's fine. Maybe hard to tell right now if that's how the size I want. I'm going to just make it a little bit bigger. And then maybe I don't want it to be so dark down there. But maybe I can change, I think, what was it? The shininess affects how dark that looks. All right. Okay, we'll do something like that for now. All right, cool. Let me move this out of the way here. Alrighty, so now I need to make a bunch of copies of this. And I think, was it in Affinity Photo version 2 or another version? They made a really easy way to duplicate objects. So with that object selected, let's go ahead and call this grill. With that object selected, I'm going to go ahead and hit return on my keyboard, and you'll get this move duplicate box. And let's go ahead and check on the duplicate box. And we want to go vertically down. So we're going to just type in a number like 40 for now. And actually, that looks like it was pretty right on the money. So what it did, it basically made a duplicate 40 pixels down. Let me go ahead and zoom in, get a closer look. It's a little bit overlapping. So let me try 42. All right, looks like it's right on. So if I were to do 50, or let's do 60, you're going to see it's now 60 pixels down. But I think 42 was right up against that other one, right? I can test it. Let's try 43. Yeah, there's a little gap there. So yeah, 42 was perfect. And we're going to remember this number just because we are going to use it later. And I want to see, can I move I want to move that down a bit. And let's do this again. Hit that. All right, cool. So 42 is our magic number. And let me zoom out a little bit here. And I need to make a bunch more copies. So we have number of copies set to 1. But if I drag this slider, I can make a bunch more. And so we're at 14. And it didn't quite fill up there's a little gap down here. So I'm going to kind of make an adjustment. I'm going to grab all of them. And I'm going to just drag it down so it's right at the bottom. And then to fix that gap, I'll go back to my frame. There was that little bar that we made. And I'll just move that bar down so it's right up to it. Perfect. And actually one thing I can do now is on that frame, I'm going to go ahead and add another effect. We're going to add an outer shadow. Click on that. We can click on the gear icon and let's change that shadow to be 270. Let's go ahead and make it pretty dark and change the offset. And you're going to see that kind of shadow coming down. So it's kind of simulating, you know, that this bar is above the speaker a little bit. Maybe up the radius to make it a bit more soft. And yeah, something like that looks kind of cool, right? Definitely adds to that 3D effect. Excellent. Cool. Alrighty. So before we go any further, let's start labeling things. So we're going to group all these together and we'll call these grills. All right, cool. All right, so now we're going to start making the holes, which is actually going to be a very similar process. This time we're going to use a ellipse tool. And let me just go ahead and make a circle here. And I'm going to go ahead and hold the shift key down to make sure we get a perfect circle. And we need to change our fill to black. And let's kind of move this somewhere kind of where it looks like it's in the middle of that speaker. Maybe somewhere around there. See how that looks from a distance. It looks okay. Alrighty, so now we're going to add a little bit of an effect to make it look more 3D. This time we're going to do the bevel and emboss. Click on this gear icon and let's change it from pillow to inner. And let's change the direction to be down. And we can do a few adjustments here. But I think you can see what it looks like now, right? This looks pretty cool. Actually, let's make this a bit brighter, maybe. And so you can see it kind of gives the effect as if the light is hitting the bottom inner of the hole. And it's kind of getting that nice reflection there. So that looks good. Alrighty, so now we're going to do the same thing. This time we're going to make duplicates going horizontal. So with that layer selected, going to hit return. Check onto duplicate. Let me zoom out a little bit here. And let's now do horizontal. So I'm going to go ahead and just type in an arbitrary number. Let's just try 40. And I always hate that I wish I could turn that off. Is there a way? I think there's a way. There's a way where it hides it when it's moving, but I don't want to see these now because it makes it hard to sometimes see that. Well, anyways, that's too close. Let's try 50. Maybe 60 might be better. Zoom out a bit. All right, let's do that. Let's just do 60. Okay, so number of copies, we're going to get to go all the way across. Get up to the edge like that, hit OK. All right, so to make sure I'm perfectly centered, I'm going to grab all those new holes. I should have labeled holes, but too late. And I'm going to just drag them all and then just going to make sure that I get that green line. That's going to show me that I am centered was the whole image there. You'll see it when I kind of move it like that. That green line is telling me I'm right in the center. This green line is telling me that I'm lined up to that edge. And so let me go ahead and zoom in because it keeps wanting to snap to the top of the speaker there. So it's just somewhere in the middle like that. All right, that looks pretty good. And so now let's go ahead and group all these together and we will call these holes. And now we can duplicate that group in the same way we duplicated everything else. So we're going to hit enter. And this time, what was that number? Was it 42? I think. No, I forgot. Duplicate. Let me go ahead and 42, hit return. And I think it was 42. And then I can just make a bunch more duplicates and bam, just like that, 14, hit OK. And now we have our speaker grill. That looks pretty good. Now, one thing depending on your computer, you'll notice that if your performance starts to slow down where it's taking a while for Affinity Photo to render everything, let me actually group these together. So I'm just going to group everything together, and we'll just call this speaker. So one thing that you can do if you're pretty sure you're not going to make any more adjustments to this and you're done adjusting it, but it's kind of slowing down your performance because just so many objects for Affinity Photo, especially because we have like 3D effects and bevel effects applied to it, you can right click on it and just say rasterize. And basically it's going to turn all that into just one single pixel layer. Now, because it's a pixel layer, it's going to improve performance a lot. You'll definitely notice like when you're zooming in and out, like it just speeds up, but we can no longer make any adjustments to things and we can't apply any more effects to it. So just be aware of that. Now, actually before, we'll keep this. I think we're okay. I'm going to keep this rasterized. I'm not going to go back and make any adjustments, I don't think. But I do want to add a little bit of a gradient to this whole speaker. So I'm going to go ahead and make a new layer. Use my gradient tool. Actually, you know what? Let's not do that. Undo. I'm going to use a exposure adjustment layer. I'm going to lower the exposure. And then with that gradient tool selected, I'm going to kind of make a gradient going from top to bottom or bottom to top. That way it kind of looks like, I don't know, just gives a little bit of a, 3D kind of effect. Then I can, of course, adjust the exposure, like how harsh I want it. But I think a little bit, something like that, just adds a little bit of character to it. All right, cool. That looks good. All right, it's coming along nicely. Good, good, good. Okay, so now we're going to probably do like the most exciting part, which is making the actual eye, the eye of HAL. And we're going to do that with, of course, an ellipse tool. So the way I kind of imagined it is like the red lens is sitting in a kind of silver ring. So I want to make that silver ring first. So I'm going to go ahead and move my cursor until I get that green line up and down. The red line is showing this is the center of the image. I don't need to be in the center exactly. I just want to make sure that I am centered vertically. So I'm going to go ahead and hold Shift and Command on my keyboard as I make this circle. That's going to allow the circle to be a perfect circle, but also allow the circle to be increased from the center. I think if you just hold Shift, it goes from an edge, so it's hard to get lined up. But if I go right in the center here and I hold Shift and Command, then I can make a circle that comes out. And so let's go ahead and make it to, I don't know, maybe this size. We can adjust it later. And fill, let's turn the fill off. And let's make the stroke. Let's change the stroke color to something like that for now. And how big do we want this? Something like that. Let me go ahead and zoom out a little bit. Let's try something like that for now. Okay. And I actually do want to lower it a bit. So I'm going to go ahead and maybe lower it a little bit there. That looks okay. All right. So now we're going to do a little interesting fill effect to make it look a bit more 3D. And so we can always do gradients and things up here where it says stroke. You have gradient and you can change the gradient to like linear, elliptical, radial, things like that. But you can also do it, which I kind of just learned recently, is you can actually do it down here with the quick effects. You can do a gradient overlay. So we're going to do it that. We're going to check on gradient overlay, click on this gear icon, and we want to do a gradient of conical. And that way you're going to see it kind of goes from white and goes around the edge all the way to black. But I want to make it look even, like a smooth transition. So I'm going to go ahead and click on this gradient box. Let's go ahead and double click somewhere here to add another little gradient point. And let's make both ends be the same color. And in this case, it's going to be white. And then this middle one, let's make it kind of a really dark gray. And I think I'm going to add, if you want to have more control, you can move these little like halfway points, but you can also add in other points. If I add another point there, I have a little bit more fine control over how it looks. Okay, so then I want to change the angle to be that way. Let's go back to these colors. One thing you can do to kind of help give it a more of like a brushed metal effect is where you click on the color. There's at the bottom here, you got a noise slider. I'm going to make the noise come up a little bit on every little part. So the white is going to have a bit of noise. And let's go ahead and zoom in so you actually see what this looks like. So you can see there, like by adding this noise, kind of gives a little bit of like a more of a polished or brushed metal effect. Kind of helps to make it look a bit more metal, I think. Okay, let's zoom out. All right, so there is our outer ring. And then what we're going to do is we're going to duplicate this. So I'm going to hit Command J to duplicate it. And I'm going to hold down Shift and Command. Actually, before I do that, let's make sure we have our cursor over one of the corners. Hit Shift and Command to scale it down again from the center, keeping it a perfect circle. And I'm going to put it right in the inside there. And then I'm just going to rotate it. And just like that, we have a pretty convincing 3D looking ring. And let's go ahead and label this. This is going to be the inner ring. And this will be the outer ring. Okay, and then of course we can make adjustments to the gradient. Let's go ahead and go back to that quick effects. Click on here. Just maybe so they're not so like identical. Maybe add another point here. Maybe I don't want it actually to be totally white. Maybe the edges, I want it to be a little bit darker. Let's try something like 88. Let's do 88 on the other side so it lines up perfectly. And yeah, you can play around and kind of, play around with it to make it look as, I don't know, how you want to make it look good in your eyes. This is all subjective. I'm just kind of showing you one way I've done it. And now that I look at this, I think it does need to be a little bit bigger. I'm going to go ahead and grab both of these, holding down Shift, and just make it a little bit bigger. And there, I know I'm right in the center. All right, excellent. Okay, so now we're going to do the main part, which is of course his eye. Ellipse tool. Let's be in the center. So here you can see, like, sometimes it's hard to tell. So this is the center of the document. But if I go down a little bit, you're going to see now it's just going to the edge. So it's showing me this is the center of the ring. And this is where I want to be. So I'm going to hold down Shift and Command and just make a ring just to the edge here. I guess I can put it behind these rings so I know it doesn't go outside. Now, of course, we need to change everything. So stroke, off, fill. Let's do a gradient, right? So let's go ahead and keep one edge white and let's change that to black, or keep it black and white. But in the middle, let's add a red color like so. So this time we're going to do the gradient up in the this area here, not the 3D effect, because there's something I'm going to do later. And for whatever reason, it didn't seem to work when I used the gradient fill in 3D effect, but it works here. All right, so we're going to change our blend, our gradient to radial. And you'll see that sometimes, depending on how you made it, like it's not in the center. So if you click on the gradient tool here, you should be able to then move that right to the center, and you can adjust these so we have something like that. Now, to get his eye looking kind of convincing, you can make a few more points to kind of, I definitely think that the dark part needs to come out more. Sometimes adding another point gives you a lot more control. I might actually add a little bit of, get this tool out of the way. I might actually add a little bit of color so it's not just the same red. I'm going to make it a little bit more orangey here. And this is where you're going to have to kind of tweak a bit and just kind of find an effect that you like. How smooth do you want the transitions? Do you want the transitions to be really harsh? Do you want them to blend in a bit better? Sometimes adding more points can help. If you think the transition's a bit too harsh there, you can see like all the little things that we can do. Maybe I don't want it actually to be completely white. How about yellow, but like a super bright yellow. So it's not totally white, it's a little bit yellow. Yeah, maybe something like this. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and just go ahead with something like this. That looks pretty good. All right, so that is cool. And now what I want to do to add a little bit of character so it doesn't look so smooth is we are going to make another Perlin noise layer. So let's go ahead and make a new layer, and let's go ahead and switch to a brush tool, and let's change one color to white and the other color to black. And then filters, noise, Perlin noise. But this time I want it to be a bit cloudy. So I'm going to go ahead and change the octaves, change the zoom. Maybe something just kind of like that for now. Hit apply. And then we're going to drag this and clip it into that layer. So this is the effect that didn't work for whatever reason. When you use the quick effects to make that gradient, it doesn't clip correctly. So maybe I'm doing it wrong, but it didn't seem to work when I tried it. So that's why I did the gradient just up here. And then let's just change that blend mode to soft light. And you can see it adds this cool kind of cloudy effect. And then we can of course lower the opacity to taste. We can even still move that noise layer around if we find another area that we like. But it just adds a little bit of, I don't know, texture to it. And another thing we can do is we can add some lens scratches. So if we go to our stock tab here, if you don't have it there, I think you can go to window, stock. And I think Affinity Photo comes with a few, like, was it Pixbay and Pexels, where you can get some stock photos. And I'm gonna go ahead and type in scratches, if I can't see my keyboard here. And there was one that I used that looked really nice. It was like a bunch of scratches on glass. Maybe it was this one. Can't remember this one, maybe. Let's try this. Drag that in there. It's really huge. So let's go ahead and like shrink it down a bit. Grab my move layer and let's shrink it down a lot. Let's zoom in. Okay, that looks kind of cool. And so I like all these scratches here. So same thing, I'm gonna clip it to that. And then we're gonna change the blend mode to soft light. And there you can see it's added these like scratches. And then of course we can go in, for example, and if I just want the bright highlights to be shown, I can adjust the source layer blend mode and then adjust the opacity. And then of course we can still, because we have that layer selected, we can still kind of move it around. Maybe there's another part that we like that has better scratches. Yeah, this is just a little bit of a extra effect to kind of, I think, like make it look a little bit more realistic. You know, HAL's had a little wear and tear on them, I guess you could say. You could also try other blend modes, hard light, vivid light, like they all kind of do different effects. Like if you really want to make it look pretty rough, you could do something like that, and it kind of gives it a more like cloudy, rough look. So again, just play with it, find something that you like, and then yeah, do that. Let's try overlay. Overlay might be okay. Usually overlay has more contrast. All right, so maybe something like that's a bit too scratched up. I don't think HAL would allow himself to be that dirty, but we'll do something like that. All right, cool. Alrighty. So now, actually, you know what? I'm gonna go ahead and on this layer here, I'm gonna go ahead and hit rasterize and trim. That way it's just not, you know, way outside. Same with this one, rasterize and trim. And that's just gonna keep it in the bounds of the document. Alrighty, so, one thing I forgot to do, I can actually see these rings are not totally lined up. Let's go ahead and make this a little bit bigger. Shift and Command, drag it out a bit. All right, cool. Yeah, one thing I forgot to do, I wanted to add a little lip, like a little reflection edge here. So I'm gonna go ahead and take this inner ring, I'm gonna duplicate that. And then I'm gonna go to my stroke. I'm going to change the color just to white. I think this one I'm using the quick effects. Let's go ahead and turn the quick effects off. There we go. All right, so now let's go ahead and make this really small, like a really thin, like, let's just do 1 pixel. There you go. And so you can see, I just kind of created this like edge. Like it looks like it's like a hard edge that's being reflected. Right now it's just a solid color, but I guess I could go in there and do a quick effect so it's, you know, darker here, lighter here, but for the most part that looks cool and it gives a nice little edge. I should probably label that, call it edge. And maybe I'll lower the opacity a little bit so it's not so harsh. Cool. Alrighty. Alright. Oops. Clicked on something by accident. Cool. Alright, so the next thing I want to do, again, I'm super detailed, and so the next thing I want to do is add a kind of like a reflection of the ring on the lens. I'm going to try doing that with the pen tool. So I'm going to go ahead and grab the pen tool. I'm going to click on here, and then I'm going to hold down shift, and then I'm going to click and hold to kind of make a circle here. And I think fill should be off and the stroke should be kind of high, something like that. Okay, we'll start with something like that. Let's actually move it down a bit. And what you can do is a stroke. Let me change it to an even 10 pixels just for fun. And if you click on pressure here, we can put a point here, and this is going to allow us to kind of taper the edge. So you can see the edge becomes tapered, so it looks kind of cool. And then let's go quick effects. Make sure we have this like quick effects. Let's do a Gaussian blur. Raise the blur amount, something like that, maybe. And then I can lower the opacity. Yeah, usually when I get these frames, what I'll do is I'll just change to a brush. That way, because if you have the move tool selected, it highlights it and it puts the paths, but then I can't really see what I'm doing. So I'll usually switch to a brush tool and then I'll make my adjustments to opacity and stuff. And so maybe something about like that looks pretty cool. Yeah, and I can maybe move it down a little bit, I think. And then I'm going to go ahead and duplicate that. I'm going to flip it by clicking on this flip vertical, and I'm going to just do another one down here. And there, you can see it kind of adds a little bit more like 3D depth, right? Like it's reflecting. I don't know. I think it looks pretty cool. All right, now the next part is we are going to do maybe on that lower edge. See, I've already stopped labeling things. On that lower edge, I'm going to go ahead and lower the opacity a little bit. All right, cool. Then I guess I can still maybe even make the stroke a little thinner so it's not so harsh. All right, do something like that. All right, so now we need to do that other really cool part, which is the reflection of the lights. And so to do that, we are going to do it with a circle. So let's go ahead and start from the center of the circle. Let me see if I can find it here. Okay, I think this is the center of the circle here. Shift Command, let's go ahead and make a circle. Let's do this for now. It's got my old settings. Let's change this. So pressure, let's reset this. I know I keep moving my tools out of the way. And then we want it to be actually no stroke. We want it to be a fill. So let's fill it with white. And then we're going to convert it to a donut like so. And let's go ahead and increase the whole radius. And then we're going to change the total angle. So right now it's 360 degrees, but if we change the total angle, we can lower that. And let's see, maybe, you can spend the time, not a lot of time, but you can do the math for this if you want. I usually just kind of eyeball it. But how about something like that? All right, that looks okay. Maybe I can, And you can also change the start and end angles here. If you want it to be really exact, you could, you know, do a total angle, and, you know, like if you want to do 90, I could do 90 and 45 on each side, and that would probably make it look even, but that looks fine to me. All right, and this is really easy. Just Gaussian blur. Something like that. And I think also I need to make sure that these probably need to be in this group so that they're also being affected by those layers that we have kind of clipped on there. All right. And actually, no, I think this, rather than white, how about like a little bit of almost like a greenish, and again, this is just my preference, maybe a little bit of a kind of greenish look, kind of gives it a bit more of a realistic look. I don't know, fluorescence on spaceships maybe. And let's go back and let's actually up our Gaussian, maybe something like that. And then we just lower the opacity. And yeah, we get our little effect like so. Now after seeing all this, I can see these scratches are probably, I should probably label this, right? These scratches might be a little too much, so maybe just knock them down a bit, and maybe this too is a bit too much. All right, so there we have a light, and now I look at this light, and I do want to change the total angle a little bit so it's not. So actually, you know what? Just to be really perfectionist about this, I'm going to make sure this is like actually centered. So let's go ahead and change this, make it easy. Let's just do 60 degrees. And then if we have 60 degrees, and the start angle should probably be at 60. And then the other angle would be, I guess, 120 if it's subtracted from 180. All right, so something like that. Okay, so that way, okay, so I guess that, yeah, those add up. Total angle is 60, and then, yeah, it works somehow. Okay, now, so let's just go ahead and duplicate that. And I'm just going to go ahead and rotate it like this, but this is a bit too long. So now let's change the start angle and the end angle, and maybe change the start angle so it's like that. Okay, cool. And then let's go ahead and duplicate that, and then just flip it like so. And then let's go ahead and grab all three of these. Let's group them together. Call this lights. As you know, my keyboard's always off to one side. It's hard to reach. Okay, lights. And then let's go ahead and duplicate that. And then with my cursor on the corner, holding down Shift and Command, I am going to, actually here I don't have to hold down Shift. I'm going to go ahead and make it a bit smaller like that. And then I'm going to duplicate it again. And it's actually pretty neat. It actually automatically scaled it to how I wanted. And then I'm going to go ahead and lower. So let's see the opacity for these lights at 60. So let's go ahead and lower this maybe. And then the other one, lower it a bit more. And yeah, that's our lights. And of course, maybe I think I want to actually lower the opacity of these ones here a bit so it's not so strong. All right, and so this is kind of my stylized lights. I know in the movie it's a bit more warped. I know some people do like 2 lights or 5 lights, but for mine, we're doing 3 lights. Yeah, there are 3 lights, not 5 or 4. Okay, so here we have this. Now I think one more thing I want to add is I want to add a shadow that's kind of like being cast from the lens protruding out. So let's see, I'm going to do that behind the lens. I'm not going to label this because I know what it is. Let's just go ahead and make a new layer. Let's grab the pen tool. I'm going to just go ahead and grab here and then make kind of some shape like that. Fill is going to be black. Okay, let's go ahead and switch to the node tool here. Let me zoom out. And, oh, actually, but this needs to be above the rings, but behind the lens. Something like that. Okay. Alrighty. And so you can see I've kind of made this little shadow effect. And actually all these, I guess these should be technically in here as well. There's my shadow. Let's go ahead and add a Gaussian blur to it. And then let's lower the opacity. There. Then we kind of have this little shadow effect. And because it's a pin, I can, make little adjustments to make sure, oops, the wrong button there. Make sure it's kind of coming where I think it should be coming from. All right, that looks cool. Make it really dramatic and make it really dark. All right, yeah, it looks cool. It's even peeking a bit down there. That's a bit too much, so let me just do it like that. I guess this needs to be up here so it's even. There you go. Yeah, I'm not really great with the pin tool, but all right, that looks pretty cool. Now just add that little detail of the shadow, I think really adds a lot to the effect. It really gives the illusion of it being 3D. Alrighty, and so now the last part is just his little nameplate up here, which is really easy. Then we're going to use a rectangle. So let's drag this back out over here. And I don't remember where it was. Let's go ahead and do something temporary like that. Rectangle, let's change that color to like, it's like a really like desaturated kind of blue, like that. Kind of dark. And let's just grab it and move it in the center. Maybe make it a bit skinnier. Sometimes even note if it's catching too much, like it keeps trying to like catch onto like here. In here and here it's catching. You can always turn the snapping off if you want to get it exactly the size you want. So we'll do something like that. And then let's go ahead and draw another rectangle in the center here. And this one should be dark gray, almost black. And then let's zoom in a little bit here. And then we can kind of make it to size, move it around. Once you move it around, you should be able to kind of, it'll start snapping to the rectangle there. And I don't know if it's exactly centered, I think. I'm going to go ahead and make mine centered so it's kind of like a stylized or idealized version of it. And then it's just the text. So I'm going to go ahead and start. I'm going to use the artistic text tool. Kind of drag a size here. I'm going to go ahead and HAL. And right now we can't see anything because the text was made at the very bottom of my layer stack for some reason. Let's put it on top. And I'm going to go ahead and select all this. Now, I think when I looked it up, the font they used was Universe, I think. This one, Universe. I don't remember if I had this or I downloaded it, but Universe. And let's go ahead and... So I think with the artistic tool, you can basically like adjust the size just by clicking and dragging. It's just kind of convenient because you can make it, skinny or long. And so maybe something about like this. Now, in order to get it white, we want it to be white, of course. I think the way we have to do this is you go to your character. And if you don't have this, you can find it in the Windows. Make sure you, Windows, text, and then under text, there's a character thing. And with character, stroke. So here we want to have stroke being white, but the background color should be no fill. There you go. And then we can adjust the stroke width. And just like that, HAL. And then let's go ahead and I'm going to go ahead and just copy this. So I'm going to duplicate this layer, move it over here. Select everything and type in 9,000. Just like that. Zoom out and voila, we are done. So now looking at it, I think the speaker might be a little bit too high. So I will, let's see, I'm going to move the whole speaker grate down just by like 1 notch. And then that curve, going to move down to be there. and then the whole eye. So let me just go ahead and grab all the, I don't think this pixel layer has anything on it. I think I just made it to, okay. And then grab all this. I can just group that together, call it eye. Okay, and then I'm gonna move that to where I kind of think it looks good. And looks like I forgot a layer. Always something I'm missing. I forgot the edge in there. All right, this too. You're in there as well. All right. Okay. Now we're cooking. And bam. We are done. We made our own HAL 9000 wallpaper. And if you're making it for your phone or your desktop, it's perfectly the size you wanted. The cool thing with working with objects, because they're vector objects, so no matter how big or small you make them, it's going to scale really nicely. So there we go. This is our custom HAL 9000 wallpaper. And because we kept pretty much everything objects, like for example, the eye, we could still come over here. Oh, the ellipse here. You know, we can come over here with our fill and we can change the color. Like if you've seen 2010, the sequel to 2001 Space Odyssey, you know there's Sal, which is like the counterpart to HAL. And you know Sal had a blue eye. And so you could go up there and then you come over here and change this to Sal. I don't know if she was a 9000, I can't remember or not, but there you go. So you can do anything you want. You can totally customize it. That's what's really cool about making your own stuff. That's why I always really enjoy making my own things, because it's just fun. So anyways, guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you liked it and you'd like to see me show you how I make a few other custom wallpapers I showed at the beginning of the video, leave a comment. Let me know. Say, hey, this is really cool. I'd love to see how you did those other ones you did. And yeah, that's going to be it. So open the pod bay doors because I am done. All right, guys. See you in the next video. Peace.